Hello, everyone, and welcome back. My name is Joe, aka Joe the Wellness Curator, and this is the Obsidian Mindset podcast, where we are redefining what wellness means to you. So hello, my athletes, friends, supporters, community members. Welcome back to our space. Today, we're talking about how to support the runners in our lives. So whether the runner is you, or you're not a runner at all, or not yet at least, but you know a few in your lives, whether they're prepping for their first 5K, a half marathon, or even a half Ironman like my friend did this past weekend. Shout outs to you, Evan. We'll get to that. There's a lot we can do for this ultimate day, and we're going to try to figure out and discuss how to be the ultimate race day hype crew. So let's dive into some fun, practical, and maybe even a little funny ways to cheer them on. So today's episode is going to be called Behind Every Runner is a Hype Crew, Tips to Support Your Runner Friend. Because let's be real, running is a solo sport, but having the right crew behind you makes all the difference. Okay, so let's be honest. When your runner friend is gearing up for a race, and if you have a runner friend, they likely have told you and complained about their runs and complained about not eating enough or eating too much. Or, let me stop because there's a lot of things we complain about. But if they are gearing up for a race, it's likely that they're preparing for a battle, right? That's similar to how it feels. You've got the nerves, you got the gear, you got the carb loading, right? So it's a lot. It's a lot to think about, a lot to juggle, especially if this is your first one. There's a lot of things out there on the internet that they say you should consider. There's so many tips, and there's the training program. There's advice, both warranted and unwarranted. So it's a lot. But that's right, you can play a big role even before the race even starts. So let's talk about what pre-race is and how the pre-race prep can be supported by you. Now, pre-race prep or pre-race is basically the time before the race starts, obviously, by the name. But there's a lot of things that go on into this process. This part is a lot of mental, right? So you'll see a lot of people do different things before their race. So for me, I'm not as diligent as I used to be, but when I first started, that included the night before, checking out what I'm going to wear, right? Having it laid out on my bed. It's actually called the flat runner or flat Joe in this case, because it's literally you're putting your clothes as if it's a person, like as if the person melted. Think about a witch getting water in the Wizard of Oz and like the clothes are just flat right there. That's what it looks like. So it literally looks like someone, you could just like pop it on. So that's usually a step. Folks like to just make sure everything's there. So in the morning, you're not rushing and trying to figure out where things are. Now, I said that was old me. New me, or a person that's done a few races, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I wait till the day of. But let's talk about what you should do, right? So this is one thing that happens during this prep period. But other than that, there's a lot of mental things that go on too. So that's more logistics. But when you think about mental, it's just like getting yourself hyped, getting yourself ready. You put in all the work, all this time, all this energy, and the big day is either a couple of days from now or tomorrow. So I bet you're asking yourself, what does that got to do with me? What can I do to help that? And you'll be surprised what you can say or do, even if it's a text, that will get the person out of their mind. Sometimes the person is in their mind saying, I can't do this. It's not worth it. The weather's not going to be good. The conditions not going to be good. There's a lot of excuses that'll go through our minds, even for the most seasoned runner, even for Olympians, even to novice. So no matter where you are, you do get some of that. So with that, there's a lot you can say or do to help alleviate that. I'll give one example. It was actually my mother. I don't know if she remembers saying this, but there was one race, and this is after a while. I've done races for a few times, but for some reason, I was a little nervous about the race I was doing. And all I remember her giving me a text saying, don't forget to stretch. And for some reason, I busted out laughing because, like, duh, but also thank you for caring and saying that. And I did stretch because sometimes I do forget, but I don't know. It just helped me kind of get out of my mind and say, okay, you know what? At the end of the day, the only thing I have to worry about is stretching, right? Everything else I've already prepared for. Now all I got to do is stretch and get there. So, that kind of helped me. So that is what we consider the pep talk, right? As a supporter, you can give that pep talk. Now, every runner is different. Some folks don't want a long-winded, robust story with paragraphs and a theme and a thesis. Some folks just want a text to say, I'm thinking about you. You're going to do great. Let's get it, right? So whatever that pep talk means or looks like to them, know your friend, know what that means. Give that to them. What would you want someone to say to you? Think about that. And then apply that to your friend, and not apply it 100% because your friend is not you, but the concept, the theory. What does your friend want to hear? What do you think they need from you? Next up, know the lingo. So you're going to be hearing a lot of words. This is before the race starts, and then just be able to know what these terms are, so that you can follow the sentence, follow the dialogue, and maybe even use them. So you're going to hear PR, which means personal record, or PB, personal best. You're going to hear splits. So that's kind of like each time or each minute or each mile or a certain period of time is a split. And you'll hear pacer. So that's like for every race, or typically most races, has someone, the race usually, not sponsors, but a volunteer usually comes up and they'll pace for a certain time. So for example, if I'm doing a half marathon, for instance, Brooklyn, they'll have a pacer for 150. So for folks that want to finish the race at 150, if you follow that pacer for the whole 13.1 miles, you'll get there in 150. They usually have it from very fast to folks that are either walking or doing a run walk split. And the reason why this is important, not to go off topic too much, is because when you're doing a race, there are so many things you have to think about. Your stride, you have to think about your nutrition, your water. Sometimes you're bored, sometimes you're nervous. So being able to not think about if you're going too fast or too slow, but just being able to follow this group of people that are pacing for the time that you want, it just really alleviates one less thing for you to think about. So if you haven't used a pacer, feel free. It's good. There's also other things like bonking. Now, did you know what bonking was before today? No? Well, neither did I. Listen, this whole thing is a learning journey, okay? So bonking is a term used by athletes to describe a state of exhaustion that occurs when the body runs out of fuel during the exercise. So another term that you might have heard is called hitting the wall. So this is when like your body is just like, you know what? We're done. And a lot of it's mental. And this is something that is called, getting over the wall. That's another term you'll hear, getting over the wall, being able to push through that wall. So as you can see, there's a lot of terms, a lot of things to consider, but just knowing them will help alleviate the stress when talking to your friend, as well as if you're able to use them in a sentence, it might help them feel more comfortable. So if you have a runner in your life and you know they have a race coming, I will encourage you to text your runner friend and say something positive or funny the night before the race. It might seem small, but I'm telling you, it'll mean a lot to the person, and you might just give them a PR or help them get over that wall. All right, so now let's get into race day realness. All right, this is when shit hits the fan. Not hits the fan. All right, let me find a better term. This is when it all comes down. This is when the metal meets the road. Is that the term? Yeah, this is when metal meets the road. I think that's the term, but this day, it can be very stressful, right? You got logistics. You have to get there. And sometimes getting there is like half the battle, because it's usually in a lot of these races are not just like down the block. Usually have to go somewhere that takes some time. You got to get through logistics. When I was doing the Brooklyn half marathon, there was metal detectors, right? Because there's a lot of security involved. So there's just a lot that goes through the runner's minds. So with that, I kind of want to use this time to talk about my recent experience as a race, but it wasn't from the point of view as running the race, but it was from the point of view as a supporter or being able to watch and be a cheerleader. So last weekend, I went to New York City to support my friend, Evan, who was running the Half Ironman. So for the folks that don't know what a Half Ironman is, take a deep breath, because I'm going to explain it. And I know you're going to either shake your head if you've never done all this, or you're going to judge, or you're going to say, oh, hell no. Because honestly, I literally spoke to my therapist about the race, and he gave a little bit of all of them. So the Half Ironman is basically a competition. It's I guess, an elevated triathlon, but it is a competition or a race where you first swim 1.2 miles in usually open water. Yes, you swim 1.2 miles in open water. Then you get off, you get out of the water, you change, and then you go on a bike and you ride for 56 miles. And then you finish your bike, you put it back up, and then you run a half marathon. So that's 13.1 miles. Yes, you do all of that in one day. This is not over the course of 2 days. This is one day. And let's just say that this is half Ironman. There is a full Ironman. So basically, everything I said, just double it. I say all that to say this weekend was my first time actually experiencing it. And it was, although I was there for a while outside, and I'm so honored to be able to support my friend while he was doing it, because it was a major achievement for him. And to be able to be there to support him just felt amazing. But I think I've learned that I also love to be able to cheer folks on. And I see that in my everyday life, right? I think I didn't need to go to this event to know that. But running a race is fun and cool, but cheering is also fun, cool, and you get to support without having to do the running or the training, right? So, and you know what? Actually, before I go on, let me give you a little piece of advice. You know what? No. I'm gonna do it after. Let me get through this. I'm gonna do it after. So I went to this I got to this half Ironman, and let me tell you, it was windy and it was rainy. Not like annoying downpour rain, but it was that weird in between where it's not drizzling, but it wasn't a downpour. So it was annoying. For me, I know if it's raining, I basically have chalked it up that I'm not running the race, right? I think I have been able to escape not running a full race in rain my whole career. Let me knock on wood. There are some races where it might have rained towards the end, but I don't think I've ever run a race where most of it was in the rain. So I count it as a blessing, always on my side. But you know what happens? There are races in the snow, there are races in the rain. Sometimes it doesn't get canceled, sometimes it does. But either way, I think that's even more reason why I'm very proud that everyone was able to get this done, because I could not imagine myself swimming 1.2 miles. I'm just going to reiterate, just so I get my point across. I can't see myself doing 1.2 miles of swimming, 56 miles of biking, and a half marathon, 13.1 miles of running in rain or drizzle. Honestly, if the conditions weren't perfect, yeah. So major shout outs. That's number one. And number two, it was just really rewarding to be able to cheer my friend on during these elements. Being in the elements, I thought I would be, annoyed, but seeing everyone go through all this stuff, it was very motivating. Seeing folks' eyes like cheer or lighten up when they felt down because I was cheering for them and I didn't even know them. This is after my friend or before my friend came. I was still cheering everyone on. And you just never know. Some folks don't have folks there for them, right? Either, just because they don't want it or they weren't able to come because they're traveling. So it's just a big opportunity. And there's a lot that can happen on the race day. And then you being there to support may mean a lot to both your friend and to a stranger. So before we even get into all that, these are some things that you get to be on the day of the race. You get to be the weather forecaster, right? So you get to talk about the prepping for the race. Like I was just saying, there's different weathers, right? There's different type of weather that you might run into. And as your friend, as a supporter, you can kind of use that information to talk to the runner and make sure that they're prepared. So if they know it's going to be raining, you might want to bring a poncho, right? If you're going on the race day to support, you might want to bring some of these things so that if your friend, the runner, comes by and you notice, oh, wow, he is, or she or they is shivering. Let me give you this poncho. This will help. Or if you know it's going to be super hot, you might be able to bring some other things that might be helpful to help them while they're in the race. This is really important because as a runner, you don't want to be burdened with holding a lot of stuff, right? At most, you'll want your gear. You might have some gels or your nutrition on you. You might have your phone or your music if that's what you're doing. But other than that, you're not carrying too much. You don't want layers, unless it's cold and you want to like take off layers. So you being that person, you're holding them down. You're like their, how can I explain this? You are like their, I don't, that is not the term. You're like their support. I don't know. It's just like you're their person with all the supplies, just like waiting. You're like the sidekick, just there waiting for when they need you. And then, although the character or the characteristics of a sidekick always seem so minuscule and unimportant, in times of high stress, such as a war or a battle or a race, that sidekick is the difference between success and failure, right? The sidekick usually knows what they need to bring. They know their main, I don't want to call it the main person because I don't want to call you a sidekick, but they know the other person and they know what they need, right? So their job is very important. It's not about you at that moment. It's about supporting that main person, supporting the superhero, for the lack of a better term. So with that said, you get to bring all these supplies for them if that's what you want to. This also includes nutrition, right? If they, if you know they need snacks, I know for me, there were some times during a race, for instance, so we're thinking about a half marathon, where I didn't have enough like gels. My gels fell out my pocket, and I was able to get it from people that were there to support me just because they had extra. If they might need water or a certain type of nutrition, you might have that on you. So these are things that you just want to consider if you're there, and your friend might not know that they need it. So you might want to bring it anyway, or you can just ask your friend, "Hey, what do I need to bring? How can I support you?" All right. So second thing that you can do, perfect sign strategy. All right. This is where you can get really creative to not only help your friend, but other folks be motivated with just the sign. So think about a poster board with a marker. Now, folks get really fancy. I've seen folks, I think there's like a company that does big, like, head cutouts, like it's your face on a stick. Huge. Think the size of my torso. And folks are just waving it around. And it's pretty cool. I've never had this happen to me, but it's pretty cool to see your face kind of looking back at you as your family is like below cheering you on. Other strategies, I've seen a lot of funny ones. So, what is another one? You're almost at the finish line, then you get a beer, or a beer is waiting for you at the finish line. If you run fast enough, you can get my number, and then they'll have their number like either covered or crossed out. There's a lot of really motivational ones too, such as, I'm thinking about a marathon, and someone writing like, there's this big thing in marathon where a lot of folks have a goal, and it's known as the beat Oprah's time. I forget what the time is. I believe it's 4 hours or something. But a lot of people strive just to be Oprah, and I think that's been going on for a while since she did it. I think she's in the 90s. And from that point on, everyone's had that. So folks a lot of use that as a golden standard or a standard that they want to beat. So you can use that on the sign, but you can also make it personal. I've seen folks use cultural, anecdotes. I've seen folks use personal jokes. But I think the best ones, at least to me, are ones that, it might hold a personal space for that person, but other people can still enjoy it too. So again, you're just being you're finding the perfect shot. You're finding out what the perfect sign would be, and you're implementing it. Don't sleep on those signs. Those signs. Oh, there is another one. There's another one that's like, there's a picture. If you guys all remember Mario, like Mario Kart, Mario and Luigi, and he needs the mushroom, right? Or the star. So the mushroom makes him grow bigger. The star makes him run faster. So I've seen folks like put the star, and it'll say basically high five the sign, high five the star, to kind of motivate the person to go faster and like they're invincible. That's cute too. So there's different ways, there's different things, but you say use this time to be creative, have fun. And this is about you showing your appreciation for the person. Lastly, I think this is a very important, and this is about finding the perfect cheer spot. So A lot of folks have different strategy about where they want to be. Typically, you don't want to be in the beginning because the person's just there, just starting. So they might be nervous. They're kind of gearing up, so they don't need to see their family. So I'm thinking about like if it's a half marathon, the first mile, I personally wouldn't. For me, I think the perfect time or the perfect place, and it depends on every race. A 5K is very different than a half than a full marathon. And I know even for a marathon, for instance, I remember when I did my first one. I believe my sister, since it was in New York City, and of course going through the 5 boroughs, she was actually able to meet me twice. So I saw her once in Brooklyn, and then she went to Manhattan. So Brooklyn probably was around mile 6, 5, 4. It was really close. And then she was able to meet me in Manhattan, which is like mile 19, 20, 21. Then that's right before you get into Central Park. But you want to pick the perfect spot for them. Think about maybe where, if you think about their long runs, if they've ever talked to you about their long runs, where are some areas or some mileages where they might have had issues, or where they, have given up, or where they might hit that wall like we're talking about. I know for me personally, that wall comes into place, especially for a marathon, at like mile 20, 21, 22. My legs get very heavy. So I really do rely on crowd participation. There are some parts of the race, and you'll see this if you ever go to a race too. Folks are in their zone. They either have music or they don't, but they are focused. They don't want to talk to you. They don't want to see you. They don't want to associate with the participants. That's it. Don't say nothing to them. But there are other folks that really soak it in. You'll see this also at bigger races. I'm thinking about Chicago and New York particularly, where crowd participation is key, or it's a really big part of it. Like New York City, there are certain sections of the race where it's like more of a party atmosphere. And it's like you feel the city being alive, and the race kind of like amplifies. So I'm thinking about New York City. I'll say the two places that are popping, and this might be me, and everyone has their own thing, but for me it was Brooklyn. And I can literally tell you, in Brooklyn, specifically around Flatbush, shout out to not Flatbush, by Barclay Center, there was actually a church out there kind of jamming out there, which was pretty cool. And they were just turning up. The people in Brooklyn, I know I'm gonna get this owned as someone that's from Queens, but the people in Brooklyn know how to turn up, even for the runners. So it was very live and very packed, not in a bad way, but there was just a lot of people there. So it's also easy to kind of be in the crowd. With that said, there's a lot of people there, so you might not even be spotted, right? If you're trying to be spotted and you don't have a sign, and you don't talk to your runner about where you're going to be, it's easy to get lost in the sauce. You also want to find a spot that's not too crowded and they can see you and be visible, if that's your goal. If you're just watching to watch, then it doesn't matter per se. Next up, I think in New York City specifically, it was Harlem. Harlem again was pretty live. Yes, I'm gonna leave it there. Yes, I'll leave it there. Now, I know I might get disowned by either runner folks or people in New York, but I'm going to say in terms of crowd participation, Chicago, out of all the marathons I've run, has the best crowd participation. Now, the reason why I'll say that, honestly, if you know me, I've said this a lot of times, Chicago to me has been the best marathon out of all the world's majors I've done so far, and all the races I've done, all the marathons I've done so far. Can't top it. One, because it's flat. Two, because crowd participation is good from beginning to end, right? I don't remember any large gaps without someone there just like hyping you up. In New York City, for me, there's a lot of stretches where there was no participation, right? When you're on the bridge, there's no crowd participation. A lot of pockets of the city, there's just not people there, or not as many. And, that might impact you. Unless you're focused and you don't care. But yeah, anyway, that's besides the point. Cheering spots are really important. And this is how you get to really make sure that you're seen, and you get to support your friends, and you get to have fun with it. Now, I want to ask you a question. All right, you ready? What's the best sign that you've seen at a race? Right, I just gave all this advice. I saw some crazy ones, but I'd love to hear your ideas. Hit me up on socials. Leave a comment with your favorite. I would love to hear what your favorite sign at a race has been. Let's get into it. Okay, before I get into the next section, which is post race essentials, I want to talk about a controversial take I got. All right. So, as y'all know, there is this trend that folks are going to running clubs with the primary pursuit or the primary goal to use it as a dating app. And you know what? I'm not even going to judge you. I'm not even going to hold you. You know, you're any space that has a lot of folks, especially if they're single, especially if they have something in common with you, or at least perceived, if you're not just going there for dating only and don't actually like running. As finding someone that has the same interests as you is always going to be a good spot to might find someone that you might want to date, right? And I think what you're starting to see, and I've read some articles where race running groups are starting to notice that a lot of the folks are like not even focusing on the running, but they're like scoping folks out, and it's kind of changing the atmosphere of the running club. Whether that's, you know, intentionally or unintentionally, it's happening. So, and I think that's really key, especially if for folks that don't like running, right? They're going there with the only intention of dating, and they don't like running. They don't want to improve. They don't want to do it. They had no interest on it. They're not wearing the right gear. They didn't even look up what the, you know. So I think that's kind of changing the vibe of these races. Of course, they're all going to be inclusive and they're going to welcome everyone. But please, if you're going to go, do some of the research, come prepared, be able to go with the intention of like at least run walking and being a part of the group. Anyway, with that said, let me give you a little tip about how to skip that if you actually don't like running and you don't like, yeah, if you don't like running, but you still want the same effect, aka you want to find a run bay. Cheering is the spot to do it. You heard me. Cheering at a race, I think, will find you better dating prospects than going to a run club. Now take a second, get your pen. We're going to talk about this. And I don't say evidence. No, we're not going to talk about that. But I have stories that will back up my thesis. So this also not only happened at the Half Ironman, but in general, you know, I've gone to races to help cheer. And I make an amazing cheerleader. I'm not even going to hold you. I just really do a good job of like building people up, making sure everyone feels comfortable. And that's for people that I'm there for and people I'm not. I'll give folks high fives. I'll get them hype. I also know when folks are focused and zoned, I don't want to talk to you. I'll leave them alone. But folks that look like they're not about to make it, right, or they look like they need help, I'm there for them, right? I'm here to give you my energy so that you can continue on and finish do your big one. As Mistress Isabel Brooks from Drag Race would say, do your big one and finish the race. Now, what I will say is the reason why you'll find a running bay from cheering at a race is because if you think about it, this is a space where runners are like at their most vulnerable, right? They're at their lowest, right? Or in a lot of cases, right? A lot of times they'll need help. And you being someone to cheer them on, is this toxic? No, I don't think so. I had to check myself really quickly. But you being there as someone to help them in their time of need, you know, I think that has an impact, right? And then my story. So this didn't happen this weekend, but in previous races that I've gone to cheer, I've actually had people come up to me afterwards when they saw me and said, "Thank you for cheering me on. It really helped me when I was like needed it." I've also had people when I was running, just because of my energy while I'm running, they'll say, "Thank you for your pace and your energy while running, because it gave me hope that I could finish, or it helped me get through my wall." I'm not gonna say if and when I've ever received a number because of it, but just know that you don't need to go to a running club to find running bay. You might find them at the race at their time of need. I'm just saying. All right, let's move on. Let's move on before I get canceled. Next up, we have our post-race essentials, right? So once that race is over, your friend did that shit, right? They did it. Your friend is going to be hangry, maybe hurting a little bit, maybe a little sore, but hangry. Angry that they did it, happy that they finished, and hungry as F. And it's not just like a regular hunger, it's going to be a hunger on a new level. Trust me. And sometimes it doesn't come right away. If you know, for me, for example, I don't get hungry as soon as the race is done. For me, I get hungry when I get home, take a shower, take a nap, or sometimes I don't take a shower, just take a nap. And then I wake up, I am ravenous, right? So, as a friend, as the supporter, you're going to help with the post-race feast, right? It is important to really have that post-race meal planned down. For instance, if it's New York Marathon or a really big race, a lot of the things in the area are going to be booked. So this is where you think about these things in advance. All right, we're going to do this afterwards. I already have it booked. One less thing for you to worry about as a runner. Boom. Or a lot of clubs, running clubs, and organizations have like feast nights or parties afterwards, and they feed you and give you drinks, or you have to pay for them. You kind of get the lay of the land, and you help them deal with that so that they don't have to think about that. That's what a running friend does. A friend of a runner does, right? You just never know what they'll need, and you never know what they'll crave, right? If they need that sugar high, get them gummies ready for them right for when they end, right? If you know they love chocolate, if you know they just need that bagel, put it in the bag. If they need pizza's kind of, I don't think you want a whole pizza, but just whatever they need, either as they finish, have it ready, or have their reservations ready to go. Because when they're done with that race, they do not want to spend 30 minutes, hour. They don't want to spend 5 minutes trying to figure out where to eat. They just want the food either in them or they want it to be figured out. So that's where you're going to come into play. And then secondly, you just always want to be emotional and physical support. Key on physical, right? Because this is real, funny, but real. Like runners, they're going to be finished. They might be hobbling, right? They might have sore muscles. They might ask for help stretching. I always see a lot of people on the grass and their friend or someone is kind of stretching their legs back. You just never know what the physical part of the help will need. And when it comes to emotional, the number of times you'll see runners cry when they're finished that finish line, it is a very, not the numbers of runners, the number of times I have cried when I finish that finish line or when I see it there, it is a very, 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 very emotional place to be. And having someone there kind of to be there with you or to kind of help you through it, it means a lot. But more to the physical physical support. So for instance, this weekend, after Evan finished the race, I ended up driving the car. He drove there and I ended up driving out, leaving. Just because, as someone that's run long races, your legs aren't going to feel the same as they did before, right? That brake and gas, the motion to go between the two, it's a little bit harder when you do all that racing. The amount of mental capacity you need to like look at all your blind spots and make sure there's no one in the way. Those are all things that might get hindered after a long race. So you just being able to say, let me drive you home, I don't think you'll know how much that would help. And also, if worse comes to worse, cheat code, again, get your pen and paper. Worst comes to worst, just have a massage gun. They're going to love you. That massage gun, they'll love you. Trust me. It is really important that you know your friend before you kind of do all these things, right? If your friend is vegan, you're clearly not going to put a reservation at a barbecue spot, right? That's all meat. But also, if your friend is going to be emotional, but they need their space to process everything, that's okay too. It's not always going to show up the same for all runners. Sometimes they just want to be in it. Sometimes they've gone through these mental hurdles. They've gone through all this training and they just need to get through it. They need to cry it out. They need to laugh it out. They need to just sit there. Although they probably shouldn't sit because that's when your muscles seize up, but they just need to be there and let them process it. Especially if they didn't hit their goal. it's heartbreaking. That's the only thing I could say. It's like you put all your time and energy, money, right? People travel for this, and you came there with a goal in mind and you didn't hit it. Of course, it's not the end of the world, but for them, especially if someone that's very competitive or put their mind to something, especially if they missed it by seconds sometimes or minutes, it's gonna hurt. So you just need to know your friend and see how you can be supportive of them in that time of need. What if that means, kind of giving them the fact that they finished at all, right? Gratitude, or just letting them talk and rant, and then being for them afterwards. All right, so we've hit the three parts of the race basically where you can be an amazing supporter for your friend. So just to do some key takeaways from that, you can be a supporter or be their person in need before the race, right? For the race day prep, pre-race prep. You could be there for them the day of the race, and then you could be there for them after the race, right? For me as a person, I am very big on not necessarily before, but the during and after. Just being able to, even if you don't go in person, I know a lot of the things I spoke about today was about going in person, but even if you don't go, just asking, how did it go? How are you feeling? Is there anything I could do to help you? And you could do that from hundreds of miles away, right? Just asking them, do you want to talk about it? When's the next one? Or that might be a sore subject for some, but just knowing what your friend needs and wants, just knowing them as a person first and a runner second, that will give you more context of what they need in that moment than anything that I've said these last 30 minutes. But with that, whether you are the one holding the sign, passing out snacks, or catching your runner as they collapse into a hug at the finish line, just know that you are a real MVP, right? You are doing something that a lot of folks don't do, and that your friend, whether they know it or not, will be appreciative of. So, with that, I want to challenge y'all to something. I want to challenge all of you to go out there and find a way to support a runner this week. Whether it's their training, right? Train with them, do a little run, do a little workout with them, or show up with a perfect post-run snack. I want you to find one way, or sending a text, checking in, whatever that looks like. Find one way to support a runner this week. And I'm gonna do another challenge because I like to do that. If you are a runner and you have a race coming up, I challenge you to tell one friend this week how you want to be supported, right? Because it's not always about waiting for someone to support you, just like in life, but also it's about telling people how they can support you so that they can show up for you in the best way possible, which is the way that you want to be supported. All right? So let's get into that. And lastly, before we sign off, I just want you all to use this time to share your stories about supporting a runner or being supported. So on social media, or on the TikToks, the IGs, the Twitter, I want you to share any story you have about supporting a runner and being supported. And of course, when you do that, make sure you tag and hashtag Obsidian Mindset Podcast or Obsidian Wellness Club. All right. So with that, thank you for listening. Please subscribe, tell your friend about it. Actually, that's the other challenge. Share this with one friend, runner or not. This could be your way of asking them to support you if you are a runner. Or this could be your way of telling your runner friend to tell you what they want to be supported with as a non-runner. But either way, send this to somebody. And then I'm really excited about what we get to talk about this season. As you know, I've really committed to just being very consistent and doing this as much as possible. Last week we had, or 2 weeks ago, we had on Coach Surge. You can expect to hear from him one more time, at least one more time, should I say. We are not done celebrating National Hispanic Heritage Month, so we're going to get into that next time. But with that, thank you again, not only for supporting me, but thank you for picking you today. All right, y'all. Bye.